Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to one more of our meetings here on Monday nights. Tonight is the second Monday of the month, and usually on the second Monday of the month, we have our public talk in English, and Mariana is all set and ready there to speak about 1 hour. You're gonna hear Mariana for about an no? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so Mariana will be here. We'll be talking about message 153 from our daily bread. And then I'll be back to talk to you about the Gospel according to Spiritism. We're on chapter number 12, and I'll be back in a few minutes. But before that, let's do our prayer, and so that we can connect even more with our dear Father, dear Mother God, and thinking about our dear friend Jesus and the good spirits that are always here and helping us through the night, through our lives, by saying, Dear Jesus, our Master, our friend, our brother, we are so blessed to be in your company, to have you by our sides at all times, the happy times, but also the hard times, the times where we suffer, when we struggle with our lives. But by knowing that you are with us, you raise our chins, make us look forward for better days, where our hearts will be lighter and even more full of love. So may your love fill our lives, open up our eyes, open up our hearts, so that we can notice you, we can see you, we can see God working in our lives. And may tonight your blessings fall upon us all, making us understand that your love for us is bigger and stronger today than our love for ourselves. May we understand that, and may we look forward to loving ourselves more, the way and as much as you love every single one of us. May your blessings and your love be within us, always and always, so be it. So with this, let's invite Mariana. She will talk to us for a few minutes.
Let us not stumble. Good evening, everyone. So like Max said, I'll do a quick reading and a very brief comment because he has a lot to say. So I'll be very briefly. We're reading from Our Daily Bread by Chico Xavier, by the Spirit of Emmanuel, chapter 153, with the title, Let Us Not Stumble. Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours of daylight? If someone walks by day, he will not stumble because he sees by the world's light. And that's written in John 11:9. And the comment from Emmanuel is, the content of this question by the Master has vast importance for today's disciples. Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Everyone should consistently ask themselves how they are using such a great wealth of time. It is empathetically stressed that there is a problem with unemployment in modern times. However, any crisis of this nature is not the result of a lack of work, but rather of the absence of individual willingness. A careful investigation would reveal the reality of the matter. Many individuals are idle because they rebel against the type of work that is offered to them, or because they object to the pay. Imbalance immediately takes over. When workers are idle, it attracts the attention of management, and the transitionary loss of the world reflects ominously and distrust. If hands stop working, factories come to a standstill. The same occurs in the circles of spiritual activity. How many disciples abandon their posts allegedly they do not have time for it? How many become idle for this or that reason, in full disharmony with the superior principles they have embraced? Because of trifles, large numbers of capable workers retreat into the shadows. However, those who have acute hearing can still listen profitably to the word of the Lord. Are there not 12 hours of daylight? If someone walks by day, he will not stumble. The funny thing about this is that Jesus said these words over 2,000 years ago, and this book was written in 1950, about 73 years ago, right? 73 years ago. And till today, all these words are so truth that it's crazy. Um, Here in the US, I'm going to talk about the US because that's where we live and that's our reality today. Everywhere you go now, you see signs of help wanted, hiring everywhere, everywhere. It's unbelievable how many signs of job opportunities that we have. And it's crazy because every single day on social media, you see people asking for help, asking for jobs, asking for this, asking for that. Why are they not taking those humble jobs? Why aren't they not taking the humble pay? Because us as human beings, we have to feed our ego. And that's what it comes down to, feeding our ego. We think we are 100% better and we are 100% more capable of what anyone is offering. But the first step to go a long way is to actually make that step. For you to go up the ladder, you have to go step by step. You can't just go up the ladder. And that's exactly what Emmanuel is saying. He's telling us that there are jobs, there's tons of jobs, but people are not taking those jobs because they think they're too good for the position or they think they're too good for the pay. And when Jesus asked the question, aren't there 12 hours of daylight? There are 12 hours of opportunity, 12 hours that we can make a change, that we can make something better for ourselves. But instead of that, we choose to live in the darkness. We choose the 12 hours of darkness, not just in material work, but also in spiritual work. How many times have I not come in here because I was too tired? How many times did I lack of making good things because I was too tired to notice, or I just didn't want to see it? How many times did my ego, did my pride keep me from doing something good, from acting in daylight? This goes beyond imagination. This goes beyond anything else. This is not just about daylight and nighttime. This is about ourselves and how we transition from our shadows, from our darkness. There's 12 hours of each. That means we have both inside of us. We have the light and we have the darkness. Which one are we choosing to act on? If you're acting on the light, you will see and you will not stumble. That's exactly what he's saying. If you see the light, if you're working on the light, the daytime, if you see the light, you will not stumble, you will not fall. If you keep walking through the darkness, every step of the way, you will find something that will make you fall, that will make you stumble. This is just so precious to all of us. And it's something that is so old, but it's so new that will never change unless we start making these changes. Like the Dalai Lama said, be the change you want to see in the world. And that's the change we're looking to be. That's the change I wish I was. That's it for me. I'll give it to Mac because, like I said, this man can talk.
So here I am once again. Thank you, Mariana, for this beautiful message. And so, as I was saying in the beginning, um, it's been a few years. Well, not a few years. I mean, it's been a very long time already. But that we do this meeting in English. It's once a month, and so therefore we have 12 meetings every year. And right now we are on chapter 12 of this book. We already went through the book once, and now we are going, item by item, and we are like almost halfway through. So we still have a long way to go. Um, and tonight we are, like I said, also said, we are on chapter 12, which is Love Your Enemies. That's the title of chapter 12. And tonight we're going to talk, or going to start talking um, about a session or a part on the Gospel according to Spiritism that every chapter. I'm going to do this brief introduction. I don't know how well you know the Gospel according to Spiritism, but every chapter we have, Kardec usually divides the chapter into two parts. So there's the first part of each chapter is, he grabs a little bit of a text from the New Testament, which is usually, a passage from Mark or from Matthew or from Luke. Sometimes he grabs some stuff from the Acts of the Apostles, here and there, a little bit of a text from Paul in one of his letters. Then he writes it down, and then he makes comments on those topics. Pretty much what Mariana did here tonight. Well, not herself, but when she grabbed Our Daily Bread, right? So Our Daily Bread is usually starts with a small passage from a gospel, and then Emmanuel makes a comment. So Kardec does the same thing. So we could say that Emmanuel is kind of imitating Kardec in a certain way. Well, he's explaining parts of the New Testament. And then comes the second part of the chapter, which is called the in English they translated the second part of the chapter as the Spirit's teachings. So they are messages that Kardec, throughout his life, was gathering from Spiritist meetings that he was going to, and then spirits would come to the meeting and would psychograph a message about a topic. And then after, when Kardec was organizing, was putting this book together, he decided to grab some of these messages and gather them here, collected um, in a basic theme or thematics. So what he does is, so like I said, the chapter is love your enemies. So he's going to reflect upon what Jesus taught about love your enemies. So he's going to reflect upon this based on what Jesus said. And then, close to the end of the chapter, he will get messages from spirits that said, oh, let's talk about this topic. And tonight's topic is about vengeance. So that's the title of the of what we're going to talk about, which is item number 9 from the book. This is one of the covers, and so this is message number 9 on this chapter. So and then we're going to have, like, we have messages about hatred, messages about dueling, messages about what else? If someone strikes on your right cheek, then offer him the other one. That we talked about this last month, and so on. So this is just a small or a brief explanation of on how the gospel according to Spiritism is. And as I usually say as well, when I come here, I'm presenting to you my understanding of what the text is. I'm not saying that my understanding is the correct understanding, is the best understanding, is the only one everybody should follow. No, it's my understanding. It's how I see it, how I read it, how I understand it. That, of course, because we study and we read, we tend to, I believe, that we tend to at least have a good point of view of the message. However, it is very, 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 very important that we ourselves, each one of us here, have our own ideas. And maybe we can discuss, maybe we can talk about, maybe we can understand or have a better idea, have a better explanation. And we can all decide by ourselves what is best or what is not so good about it. I'm reading this book right now, and I'm going to do a parenthesis here. Um, I'm reading this book that's called The Mists of Avalon. It's a book from the 1980s, and it's a fiction, not a true story, but it's a fiction based on the legend of King Arthur. And maybe everybody, already heard a little bit about King Arthur. If we grew up, if we watched like um, Disney movies, for example, there's a pretty movie, and I really like that movie. It's called The Sword on the Stone, where Arthur, as a young kid, right, is able and is the only one that's able to remove that sword, Excalibur, from the stone. And only the person who would be able to do that would be the king of the United Kingdom, which was not United Kingdom in at the time. This was in the years 500, 600 after Christ. So it's been was a long time ago. So that's kind of the story. I mean, it's the story, or it's the legend of King Arthur told by a different perspective, which is a very interesting perspective because it is told from the perspective of the women involved in the story. It's not the story as told by the man, it's the story told by the women. And the women are very, very important in that age. Well, they are important, in any age, but history tends to tell the stories of men and not stories of women, and that's why I find this book to be very, very interesting. And there's a talk between, and actually this talk is interesting because it's a woman telling the story, so women are telling the story, and but at this specific moment, they are telling the conversation between two men, not two women. They're talking, they're telling the story of two men. One is a bishop, meaning he's a person from the Catholic Church or the Christian Church. There was not Catholic and Protestant. It was way too far before Protestants even existed. So, um, and the other one is a man who is, in, if you know the legends, who is the Merlin, who it's like the sage, the person that's kind of a wizard, kind of a, so he is part of a tradition in the islands, which is we called the Druids, and the Druids honor God or the goddess, which doesn't matter. Um, They don't have churches, they don't have buildings. They honor and they do everything out on the open. They do everything out on the fields, on the forests, by the water. It doesn't matter. And there's this conversation between this bishop and the Merlin, and they are at this moment in the story, they are the counselors of King Arthur. So King Arthur is already king, and King Arthur chose two men to counsel him. One is a Christian, the other one is a Druid. So he's trying to get input from everywhere. He's trying to gather everything instead of separating. So he's not a king for the Christians, nor a king for the Druids. He's a king for everybody. So he gathers, but there's this back and forth, this bickering, this kind of a fight between the Merlin and the bishop, right? And then the bishop says something about, oh, you don't know the scriptures, you don't know what Jesus did, you don't know this, and you don't know that, and so you should not worship this, you should not worship that. And then the Merlin looks at him and he says, well, this is not what Jesus does, meaning he knows what Jesus does. He was reading the Bible, he was reading the thing, and he says, "Oh, Jesus walked with prostitutes. Jesus walked with uh, uh, tax collectors. He walked with every kind of person. So what you're telling me is that we cannot walk with these people, and Jesus did something like that." And the priest says, oh, you don't understand what Jesus wanted to say with these. So it is, I mean, I'm not it's interesting when you're reading, but the idea, what I want to say is, and what the Merlin wants to tell the priest is, um and then he says it later, every man should have the Bible, to read it and interpret it by itself, and not to use other people's interpretations only. That's why I started the way I started. I am telling you something. I am going to talk about this chapter, this item, but mine is one opinion. It's not the best, it's not the only, it's not the most important. It's one opinion. It's more to raise our thoughts, to make our pot be stirred so that we can have ideas and maybe later get the book and read the message and see what we can take from it, because that's why we are here, right? Or at least that's one of the points of being here. We come for healing, we come for friendship, we come for the place, for the good environment, but we also come to learn. We also come to have something that's good food for our minds, and that's what I hope I can provide. Uh, Not the food, but the spoon to stir the pot, because a lot of what I'm going to say you already know. A lot of what I'm going to say you probably already heard. But sometimes you tell a story, and then things are like brighten up in our minds. So, um, vengeance. Everybody knows, I think, that saying, um, or that law to some degree, which is not a law today for us anymore, but it's a law that was in place a very long time ago, which is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, right? Meaning that if you took my eye, I will take your eye back, right? If you hit me and I lost my tooth, I have the right to take your tooth out, right? So I think that we all have that thing in our minds. Like we kind of hear this from time to time. Maybe we don't hear it as often as I heard when I was a kid, but we hear and we have this thing in our minds. There's a writer. His name is Khalil Gibran. Um, Usually the full name, for whatever reason, we usually say it's Gibran, Khalil Gibran. He wrote a few books, very famous books, and the most famous one is The Prophet, which is a collection of thoughts on ideas, which is a very, very awesome book. And he has a saying, or he has a sentence that I find to be very, very, very interesting about this: an eye for an eye. It I always remember that sentence when he says this: an eye for an eye, and the whole world would become blind. An eye for an eye, and the whole world would become blind. That law of the an eye for an eye, to me, represents what vengeance is. I give back to you exactly what you gave to me. But I'm going to tell a story of before that law. Before that law existed, and that was a true law, that was a law that was created, right? And we say that this is barbaric. Right? It's barbaric. I mean, you do something to me and then I'll go back and do something to you. And that's the law. I'm not saying that that's what we do. That was the law. That was the law. But some people and some of us, what some people and some of us don't know or don't remember is that before that law was created, there was no law. So if there was no law and someone came and took my eye, I would go there and kill the person, because there's no limit. I can do whatever I want. So actually, the law, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, is an improvement. As much barbaric as as it can sound, but it is an improvement over what we had before. So can you imagine how terrible it was before? We know how it is. We don't even need to imagine. We watch movies, we know how it is, right? But just to think that this was an improvement, it just like when I first heard this, I said, no, that cannot be true. But then you realize that it is true. But when we see someone doing something that is an eye for an eye, if we are at least a little bit civilized, we will say, what? We don't need to be the best person in the world. We don't need to be Jesus Christ. We don't need to be a Gandhi. We don't need to be the Dalai Lama. We don't need to be. We are. Why? So that's why Khalil Gibran says an eye for an eye and the whole world would be blind. Because if we improved from that no law to certain kind of law, but if we stick to that law, what's going to happen? There's no limit because you never stop. You never stop. Oh no, but it's a retribution. Yeah, but if he took like an eye and give me a scratch, then I'll have to give a scratch to them. And then if something happens, then I'll go back and do it. You never stop. We all heard stories, and we are all Brazilian here, I guess, but it doesn't need to be Brazilian. I guess this is kind of a universal story. Um, a family is in fight with the other family. Doesn't matter where. And then you kill someone of that family, then that family will do everything or anything to go and kill another person from the other family. And then the other family will do what? The same. And when does it stop? You know, think about this. I am starting to talk about vengeance at a very high level, which is not considered vengeance when it was a law, because it was an improvement, right? But hopefully, or I think, not hopefully, that we improved from that time, 3, 4,000, 5,000 years ago to now. Have we? Have us all? Hopefully, some of us. Hopefully, us. But how many times have we heard and have we seen people lynching a person because he did something, and then they grab them, put them on the ground, and then they kick and throw stones? And how many times do we take the law on our hands with our anger, with our hatred towards whatever, whoever, however the person is? Oh, because they are black, because they are homosexuals, because they are transgendered, because they are Martians, because they are white, blue, whatever, because they are from Avatar. I keep wondering, right? If in a person from a Navi, right, from Avatar would start living here, what would we do? Because can you imagine? Can you think about, we are here and we go through our issues and so on. But can you imagine living in a society where you go enter into a bus, and because the person is a white person or is a black person, you cannot sit on one seat and you have to move to the other seat? Wait.
That this just happened. It wasn't even that long ago.
Yeah. It when you walk by a store, and there's a sign on the store where it says we don't serve colored people. And I'm not talking about 3,000 years ago, talking about 50 years ago, 60 years ago. The worst part, or not the worst part, but something that um, stirs my pot is that all these people that were doing those things, if we were, and that's a to me that's a fair question. What would we do if we were on that age, living through those times? How would we think about those things? There's a French song that a friend of mine sent to me a few months ago, and I was listening to it. The name of the song is could translate somewhat to I was born in 1917 in Leidenstadt. It's the name of a town. I think it's in Germany. That's the name of the song in French, and it's a few people talking about different things. One of them is and then he says more or less something like, "What if I was born in 1917 in Leidenstadt? Would I do the same things that people did in Leidenstadt in 1917? What if I was born in Alabama 50 years ago, 60 years ago? Would I be doing the same thing? Would I have joined the Ku Klux Klan, for example? How would I be feeling? What if I was born in Germany during the Second World War? And I were not a Jew? What would I be doing? Would I join the army and do the same things that lots of them? So who are we to judge in that sense, right? So that's why we need to learn to know ourselves, to know how we think. Because when we look back and we look at those people that were here in the United States, and like Mariana said, that's what we're going to talk about because that's where we are, right? We're Brazilian, but we are here. So the example is from here. Um, they were Christians. We are Christians. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because of one of the sentences that this spirit that gave this message is called Jules Olivier. He gave this message, he wrote this message in Paris, 1862. So he says, um, first he starts by saying, I'm going to read just a few sentences here because I find this to be very interesting. And once again, please read if you have the chance. It's not a very long text. It's just one full page, right? Front and verse. So it says, and that's why I started talking about barbarics. He says, vengeance is one of the last remnants arising from barbaric customs. Vengeance is very barbaric. It's still very barbaric. And I started by talking about the law that is a barbaric law from a long time ago. But we still see it happening today. But that's why I started doing citing this. But he keeps talking about this, and he talks about duels and blah blah blah. So he says, as you well know, as we well know, vengeance is so contrary to Christ's prescription: forgive your enemies. It's the total opposite. The total opposite. But you know how we have revenge or take revenge on other people, and what's our excuse? Do you know what's our excuse? Oh, I'm teaching the other person a lesson. I am a teacher. So we raise ourselves, right? We raise ourselves. Oh, I'm a teacher. The person cannot she did this to me, he did this to me, I have to teach them a lesson. That's what we use as an excuse. And I'm stirring the pot. You may not agree with me, but I'm stirring the pot. I just want us to think about this because it's so easy. It's so easy for us to fall into vengeance. So easy because we want to get back onto that person. Oh, he said that to me. She said that to me. Now she's going to see it. Isn't that how we say it? Isn't that how we feel it? Isn't that how we hear from other people? And are we or are we not Christians? Question mark. For all of us. I'm not asking you guys. I'm asking everyone. I'm asking myself. And he keeps going. He says, as you well know, vengeance is so contrary to Christ's prescription, forgive your enemies, that those who refuse to forgive, and the refusal to forgive is a vengeance. And sometimes you refuse to forgive and you say, I'm not going to do anything, but the mind is doing. And if you have the chance, what you're going to do if you didn't forgive? You're going to do a revenge. That's why it's the opposite. But he keeps going. Those who refuse to forgive those who refuse to forgive not only are not spiritists. This guy, I like this Jules Olivier, or I don't know if I like him or I hate him, but he like pounds it, presses it, squishes it. Are not only are not spiritists, but they are not even Christians. He doesn't like, oh no, you're no. Yeah. He gives it straight. So it is hard. I mean, like I said, I'm not saying I think. I'm not saying anything that's new here. I don't believe I'm saying anything new here. I'm just like I said once again, and I apologize for repeating this, but I'm stirring the pot because when we think about vengeance, usually we think about, I don't know, maybe big acts of vengeance, right? You did something so bad, so extraordinary to me, I'm going to take revenge on you and I'm going to do it. And some people will like work, behind the curtains, will hide themselves. And then all of a sudden, like a snake, they will. This is even worse, right? Because it takes a mind full of bad ideas and ideas of doing bad things to work out and to do something against someone, right? So this is probably what we think when we think about vengeance, because that's what we see in movies, that's what we see in soap operas, that's what we see in series, right? We see all these plots and all these things, but vengeance is not only that. Vengeance are small things that we still didn't solve within ourselves. And that's where the problem lies. Because if we want to get better, if we want to improve, and we are already not doing those big acts of vengeance, it means that we improved from the past, right? That we did in the past and we're not doing it now. However, if I want to improve from here to here, I need to do the next step. And we tend to excuse ourselves because we say, oh, no, I don't do that anymore. So meaning, oh, I'm already like a good person, right? But are we? Because right now, it's like a kid that says, oh, you need, the kid is on, I don't know, the second grade. And then gets to the third grade, right? And looks at everything that needs to be done and said, "Oh, I already came from the second grade," as if like it's, oh, you have the whole third grade to improve, and then you finish third grade. Oh, you have the fourth grade, and then you have fifth, and it's the same thing with us. I mean, graduating from not doing a big act of revenge, it's very good, but it's the first stage. It's the first or second grade or third grade, whatever the grade is. Now, if we are here, we need to go to the next grade. It's just part of evolution, of progress, of getting better, of improving ourselves. And of course it is going to be hard. What is the kid that finds it very easy to go from second grade to the end of third grade? No one. No one finds it easy. If you just graduated second grade and the teacher gives you the final exam of the third grade, what is the kid going to say? I have no idea what you're talking about, because it's 1 year full of knowledge that you didn't have yet. Same thing with us. I graduated from this. I would never do something like remove the eye of another person, whatever, right? Because taking the literal meaning of the law, an eye for an eye, I would never do that to someone. Yeah, but if a person says something bad about you, what am I going to say? Am I going to say how lovely? If I say the same thing that he told about me, it's an eye for an eye. It's as simple as that. But that's how we do it all the time. I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about myself. Maybe you are better than I am. But that's how we have to start thinking. Otherwise, we're still stuck on the second grade. And we still have to practice. We still have to. And that's why maybe we come to the Spiritist Center. That's why maybe we go to a church. That's why maybe we watch a movie. We tend to get good books to read, to try to get that through our minds and our hearts, so that when it happens again, I start thinking differently. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck at the same place doing the same thing over and over and over again, until I wake up and say, hey, wake up. The coffee is already there in a pot. So wake up, smell the coffee, and go and do something. That's what we should be striving or maybe thinking of doing. Oh, some people stay behind. Yeah, some people stay behind. No issues, no big problem. It's 1 year more in education, but you can get through. You can still get through. If you work harder, you can, jump 2 years. But if you have to speed it up if you want to catch up to other people that are already ahead. If not, then take your time. But like Chico Xavier said, right? I move slowly, just like a snail, just like what else? A turtle, just like a turtle. But it's always moving forward. It's always moving forward. It doesn't matter the pace. What matters is, and then there's the tale, right, of the rabbit and the turtle, right? The rabbit was so fast that he decided to stop to give the turtle a chance. And how it happened? Slept too much. And then the turtle, as slow as the turtle was, won the race. We keep moving forward, but we have to move forward. We have to work on those steps. Work on those steps. So vengeance is not just that big thing. It's a small thing. On the small things, and if we work on the small things, we can improve little by little, little by little. That's how we came from not learning, not knowing how to write our names. Diogo is not here today, but is there anyone here that works with doctors or no? Never wanted to be a doctor. Oh, but you got prescriptions in Brazil, right? And so we all know how, a doctor came from not knowing how to write their names, learning how to write their names, and they forgot how to write their names, right? So they came full circle. So, but they progressed, right? Not in writing, but they progressed. So our job is to go from not knowing, maybe to forgetting, but walking, right? Moving forward. So uh, when we receive like a compliment of someone telling me that how pretty I am, how awesome I am, how great I am, right? I should, tell good things about them as well, right? There's this saying that talks to us. It says there's this guy, Peter, talking about this other guy, Paul. So Peter is saying something about Paul. When I'm listening to this, and he is telling me about Paul, I know more about Peter than I know about Paul. Because by what Peter is saying, I know him. And I know nothing about Paul because I don't know if Paul is the way Peter is telling me. So if someone is telling me something that I am this or that I am that, and I know that I am not, why should I care? So some people tell me that my wife tells me that I'm pretty. She says, well, she does. I get to the house and she looks at me and say, pretty, right? You're so late, pretty. so, so uh, if I know that I'm pretty, right, and a person tells me I am not, why should I care? And if I know that I'm ugly, I'm going to thank them. So it's on us. It's always on us, always. But we tend to put the blame on the other person or whatever happens on the outside. It's always the other person. So it's never us. It's always the other person. So there's this joke or this it says that if you're in the office, something happened, something bad happened, and you're still laughing, it's because you know who you're going to blame. You know who you're going to blame. So it's that idea of it's always to blame the others. Always to blame the others. I never take responsibility. And that's usually what it is. If a person likes or doesn't like what I do, if a person this or a person that, if I'm clear with my conscience, I am clear with my conscience. If I don't start to think like this, it doesn't need, what I'm saying is, or what I'm not saying is, so after I said this, everybody needs to think to do this immediately. No. But if I don't start to think like that what the world does to me in most of the times is my responsibility in how I react or how I act than what actually the world does to me. Otherwise, I'm always going to be revenging or avenging, saying something back and fighting back and giving back what? If I want the world to change, I have to change. I am part of the world. So if I don't like the world the way the world is, but I keep acting the same way the world acts, what am I doing to the world if not keeping the world the way it is? Oh, I don't like this this wall that's all white. I bought white paint. It's the same thing. It sounds paradoxical. It sounds weird if I don't like the white of this wall and I buy another white. But that's what we do. Oh, but when we say it in a physical sense, we see how crazy it is. But because it's us, I am doing it. And it's a mental thing or a spiritual thing or a moral thing, we find excuses for it. Oh no, I'm going to teach a lesson to Mariana. That's our excuse, right? That's my excuse. For we don't want to call it vengeance, then we call it a teaching moment. Oh, that's a teachable moment. What? So we have to really start to seeing these things from a different perspective. We really have to look at um, acts of vengeance, not of those monstrous things that happened in the past, although they still happen. So the first step for us is never go back to that, to the barbaric customs of old times, of an eye for an eye. But we have to move as far away from an eye for an eye as we can.
I feel like the reason why revenge is still a big thing among all of us is because we have so much pride and so much ego inside of us that if somebody does something bad to us, it just hurts our ego so bad that we have to make that person feel the same way.
Yeah.
Have that same feeling of, okay, I'm hurting you now by hurting you, even if it's by taking your eye out.
That is so true. That is so true. We want to make the other person suffer as much as I do. Because I still didn't understand that the teachable moment was for me. Jesus says, right? The scandal has to come. So the problem, the situation, the difficulty, the issues, they have to come. They will arise. They will arise. The problem is not the situation. The problem is who causes the situation? Who causes the problem? Yeah. So he caused the problem to me, right? Now the person will have to learn something. If I do the same thing to them, I didn't learn it yet. So if I didn't learn, how can I teach the other one? And that's the big thing, and that's the big paradox inside our minds, is that we want to teach what we don't even know yet. We don't know because we're doing the same thing. Doing the same thing is not teaching. Doing the same thing is not teaching. Teaching is the other way around. Teaching is showing how you don't do it. That's teaching. That's where the idea of making this or using the sentence or using the teachable moment words for these, we are using excuses to switch from revenge, from vengeance to, oh, I'm going to be a teacher. That's not what good teachers do. Good teachers don't take revenge on their students because they didn't do what's right. Good teachers will show them how not to do it. We'll show them how to solve the problem. We'll go to the blackboard how many times it is necessary. Bad teachers will do what?
Get the ruler and smack you. That's how I used to teach. You didn't do your homework?
Yeah, bam, yeah. So, and we all have these in our minds, and maybe that's why we still are repeating these things. So we have to start not doing it. so that we can teach differently, that we can learn ourselves and teach others differently. And just to finish, it's a story that it's maybe it has something to do with vengeance, maybe not. Maybe it's the way we see things, maybe not. But it's a story, very simple story that I kind of like to make my brain think about. How do I see the world? There's this man that lives. This road connects two towns, two small towns, two small villages. There's a bridge in the middle in between these two towns. And this man is right by the side of the bridge. A big small house. He sits there, sees life go through. A man's coming to go from one town to the next town. And he comes and stops and he says, "How do you do, sir?" He says, "Oh, I'm doing all right. How are you doing?" "I'm doing all right too. Hey, I have a question for you." "Yes. Um, I'm moving from this town to that town, and I heard some things about the town, but I wanted to know from you, since you live in between both towns, what do you think of the next town, of the town across from the bridge?" And he says, uh, "Before I answer that to you, how is the town where you came from?" And he says, "Oh, I like that town. This is a good town. Have good people. People are awesome. It's just that I wanted to see how it is to live in a different town." He looks at him. The old man looks at him and says, "Oh, my youngling, you're going to find that this next town is the perfect town for you. It's going to be great. You're going to find so many opportunities, so many good people, and so on." "Oh, that's good news." And then he starts walking by. He sits down, stops to eat something, and comes another man. And the other man comes and, kind of grumpy and, complaining about life and stuff. And he stops and he asks the same thing. "Hey, um, I just want to know I have one question for you, sir." I say, "Yes. I'm told to move to that town because the town that I come from is a terrible town. So many bad people, so many terrible, opportunities. And will I find a better town? This next town is better." "No, this town is the worst town. If I were you, I would stay back." And then the other man is like right there and looks at him and says, "Why did I ask anything to this old man? The next town is good, or is it bad?" Now my question to you. Next town is good or is bad? If how we live, how we see the world changes the world totally. If I want a world with less revenge, I have to be less vengeful. Period. It's my task. It's our task. It's how we change the world is by changing ourselves. So this is a little bit of the text of Vengeance, chapter number 12, item number 9 from the Gospel according to Spiritism. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your attention. And I'm going to do the final prayer. And you guys going to have the passes so that we can finish our meeting. Um, and well, this has been recorded and transmitted on the internet. I don't know if anyone is listening right now, but good night to you too, if you're listening here or in the future. Um, and so with this, let's just thank our dear friend Jesus. Thank God. Thank the good spirits for once again being here, for allowing us to have this opportunity of thinking about ourselves, thinking about the responsibilities we have towards ourselves, but also towards the world, towards those who live around us, our friends, our family, the ones that we work with, everyone. Because whatever we do, when we know dear friend Jesus, that whatever we do, we make a mark in this world. So help us do the best that we can and allow us, when we make mistakes, to correct them by praying to you and by asking you and asking God for your guidance. So may your love, may your peace be with us always and always. So be it. So, as I said, we're going to have the passes, and as we finish, we finish.